Check out betonline.ag for updated college football playoff, Heisman, and college football week 6 lines. And now joining us is the former NFL and college quarterback in Danny Kanell. Danny, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic, Zach. And being, all things considered, it was an opportunity for Florida State, Miami to be facing his top 10 opponents. We gagged a little bit on Friday night. Credit to Virginia. That was a really impressive performance by them. But we still have an opportunity. Florida State does this weekend against Miami at home at Doak Campbell. I'm headed up that way tomorrow. Should be an electric atmosphere. So there's still a lot that's there on the table for Florida State, clearly.
I actually got a picture sent to me of you this past weekend with my buddy Josh Booty. So I'm going to blame Josh Booty and the photo you guys took together. He said, I'm hanging with your guy, Danny Kanell, is why Florida State lost. That's what I'm going to chalk it up to.
All his fault. It's all his fault for sure.
So wouldn't it be so college football, though, Danny? And I was talking about this with Channing Crowder earlier today when I was on his show. And I said, Florida State loses last week, right? Not that the juice gets sucked out of this game, but it is a letdown. You wanted both those teams to be undefeated. Wouldn't it really be college football for Florida State to bounce back this week and upset Miami?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this season, there's been so much parity, and it was funny because when Florida State lost that game, that's actually what I put out. I'm like, hey, this is going to become the new normal. Like seeing teams go 12-0 or 11-1 is going to become highly abnormal. The new normal is going to be 9-3 and 10-2 are the really, really good football teams. And a lot of, I was kind of speaking to Florida State fans, trying to keep them, from throwing in the towel in the season. But a lot of people were like, oh, you're just trolling. You're just saying that because Florida State lost. And then what we see the next day? USC loses as a favorite against Illinois. We see all these crazy games going back and forth. Oregon upsets Penn State there in Happy Valley. Like, I just think it's becoming more like the NFL, especially at the Power Four level. Sure, the group of five, you'll see some blowouts and you'll see some bigger point spreads. But when you see Power Four teams squared off, Florida State game's a good example versus Miami. They're a 4.5-point underdog. The total's around 55. Like, that's usually, it feels like an NFL line. And that's because the parity is here, just like it is in the NFL.
How should I feel about Alabama right now? Obviously, they got crushed by Florida State to open up the season. And then at the end of the month, they found a way to beat Georgia over the weekend. How should people feel about Alabama moving forward, in your opinion?
I think they're the best team in the SEC right now, and maybe one of the best teams in the country. I mean, I picked them to win the SEC coming in, and I was not ready to jump off the bandwagon early. Granted, I thought Florida State was a really good football team. It was sort of a perfect storm. They had 11 new starters, new offensive and defensive coordinators, so they were able to kind of spring some things that Alabama hadn't seen. It was in Tallahassee. Game goes sideways, you lose one. Again, kind of goes back to what I'm talking about. Like, a loss is not as devastating as it has been in years past. Meanwhile, still recognizing they still have NFL talent on that roster. And they were without Jam Miller, their running back, and Tim Keenan, one of their best defensive tackles. Well, guess what? Both of those guys came back and played in Athens the other night and were a big influence on that game. Not to mention Ty Simpson has been absolutely lights out since that game that he lost in Tallahassee. I think he's playing quarterback as good as anybody in the country. He's still perfect in the turnover column, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's extremely accurate. And I think the leadership was one thing that was missing. And maybe it didn't see it on display in Florida State, but since then he's sort of taken ownership of this team. That was on display. They did a good job documenting him pregame, giving the pregame speech at halftime, him talking to his players. I think he's really stepped up in a leadership role too. So I think Alabama is going to be in the SEC championship game. I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they're one of the best teams in the country.
How about Mississippi State, Texas A&M? Mississippi State's having a solid season. I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of A&M with their two wide receivers. You got Marcel Reed, too. But more importantly, Elko has that defense really going. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, I think it's going to be a good game this weekend.
I do too, but I'm a little bit worried about Blake Shapen, the quarterback from Mississippi State. He was running for his life a little bit last week, and that was in his own backyard with the Cowbells. Now he's got to go on the road to face the 12th man against a defense, which is one of the best in the country. Mike Elko quietly, his team has been absolutely balling. And the Auburn-Texas A&M game last week was one of the more deceiving scores that we saw because Texas A&M dominated that game. I think they outgained them like 350 yards to 130. Unfortunately, it was really sloppy. There were a lot of penalties. They had a couple turnovers. So then you're looking at a one-possession game late. I think Texas A&M is really good. You mentioned the receivers. Casey Concepcion has been an absolute great find for them in the portal. And Marcel Reed's slowly developing and getting better and better as a passer. Le'Veon Moss, one of the best running backs out there too. I think I actually like Texas A&M to win and cover this weekend. I know it's up there around 10.5. I'm not afraid of it. I think it'll be close for a little bit, but I think Texas A&M pulls away late and wins and covers.
Texas and Florida, I don't know what to expect out of Arch this weekend. Billy Napier, I know what to expect. And then also with DJ Lagway, I knew Napier wasn't fit for Florida anymore. Lagway's the stunning part to me. 5 interceptions a few weeks ago, 60-something passing yards a few weeks ago. What should we expect out of the quarterback play with Texas and Florida?
But Zach, did you not hear Billy Napier said he saw a look in his eye? He talked about his quarterback. He said he saw a look in his eye this week.
And you know what his quarterback said to him? Hey, coach, stop calling the plays, all right? Let's change something here.
I thought you were going to say, you know what? He said he saw the boot on his leg as well, which he was sporting this bye week. It's easy to mock and it's easy to make fun of, but he came in with such lofty expectations. And he did play well last season, but what he looks like to me is somebody that missed an entire offseason, being injured. He had his shoulder issue where he couldn't throw it during spring practice. He had his calf injury, which caused him to miss a lot of training camp. And it's sort of the perfect storm. And by the way, their offensive line has not delivered on the protection that's needed for DJ Lagway. So he looks like somebody who's not up to speed with his receivers. He's not getting the run game support. And then you sort of get exposed. And then your offense looks stagnant, which is what you're talking about. Like, why is Billy Napier still calling the plays? So I'm caught a little bit because I've backed the Gators 3 times this season, and every time I've been burned on them. And yet I find myself looking at the Gators. I think this is their last-ditch effort where I still think the players like Billy Napier. I know Florida fan base is ready to send him packing. They're ready to go for the next coach. I still think the players like him. The defense, I think, will show up. And you mentioned it. What are we going to get from Arch? It's the first time we've seen him on the road since he went to the shoe in week 1 where it wasn't great. He really only has one really good game under his belt against Sam Houston where he played well from start to finish. How is he going to play in this performance? Is he just going to be a game manager? Is he going to make a critical mistake? Or are we going to get the Arch Manning that we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the year and somebody who actually lights it up and goes on the road and works his way back into a Heisman conversation? I honestly don't know the answer to any of that. And by the way, you know what the experts think? This is going to be an ugly affair because the point total has been coming down and down and down. And I think it's probably the right play because both defenses, I think, are pretty good and you can't trust either quarterback.
I know you said you're uncertain about Arch. Will this team, in your opinion, if you had to say yes or no, will they make the playoff this year?
No, I don't think they do. I think they're 9-3 at best, and I think they're 8-4 at worst. Until I see Arch sustain success. And I still think Arch, like next year is the year I would pick Texas to win the national championship. And what's kind of crazy is their defense is just as good as it was last year, but the offense is still just sputtering. And he does look like a normal first-year starter, somebody who's a little bit, kind of shaky. You can't really trust him, incredibly up and down. I think that's the type of year it's going to be. I think it's going to be a roller coaster ride, in which that's exactly what we've seen. Until I see him separate and develop some consistency and some confidence in that system and become more of an accurate passer with more consistent mechanics, I don't trust it. So their schedule is much tougher this year. Last year, this game, they blew out Florida, like 52-7, absolutely blew them out. This year, they're only a 6.5-point favorite on the road, and I think Florida's kind of a live dog even. I know it's crazy to say, but until I see Arch go out there and prove me wrong, I'm going to say year 2 is the year you back Texas. Until then, I don't think they're a playoff team.
Wrapping up with Danny Kanell, Arkansas is open. I know before they hired Sam Pittman, they did interview Coach Prime. Could you see them having Calipari coaching basketball and Coach Prime coaching football come the fall?
It's interesting, Zach, because I haven't heard anybody mention Coach Prime's name, and that you are spot on. That was one of the first jobs he got. I think even before Jackson State or right around then was when he started talking to Arkansas. So maybe there is some interest there. But the bottom line is I think the favorite's Rhett Lashley at SMU. He played football at Arkansas. He's, he coached under Gus Malzahn. He's the perfect kind of guy for that job. The question is, how attractive is it? And that's where I think that if it did happen to be Deion Sanders, it would be because several others fell through that looked at it and say, you know what? It's not that attractive a job. I don't know if we can compete against Alabama, Georgia, Texas, the big spenders in the SEC. But we have to remember, They've got Tyson Foods money. They have Walmart money in Arkansas. At what point do you not look at a guy like Rhett Lashley and say, fine, we'll do whatever it takes. We'll get the resources. We want to get our guy, and we're going to be competitive. We're going to turn this thing around. But if they don't make that commitment financially and show them kind of like Virginia Tech did, but in a much bigger way, and say, we're going to give you every resource you need, I don't know if that job's attractive. And a lot of the names they're looking at are going to wait and see if Florida opens, if Auburn opens. And so Arkansas is looking like it's going to be a third or a fourth option for a lot of guys.
What did you make of Dylan Gabriel getting announced as the Browns starter today? And then Shedeur Sanders, when doing his media availability, was basically pretending to be a mime when talking to the reporters.
Yeah, I know, because Rex Ryan told him not to talk. I mean, Rex went all over the top on him, but I do think, like, as a third-string quarterback, you shouldn't be talking to the media. Now, they come up to him. It's not his fault. It's not like he's offering up his services. I'm not surprised at all Dylan Gabriel is starting this. I mean, he's the backup. He's the guy who did play better over a longer period of time in the preseason. Those coaches have been able to see him, and even if you don't see all that, you have to look at the politics that come into play. He was a third-round pick. Shedeur was a fifth-round pick, so Dylan Gabriel's going to get the first opportunity unless he totally screws it up. I do think Shedeur will get his chance because this Cleveland team is not very good, and I don't see Dylan Gabriel going out there and lighting it up. So Shedeur should just play it quiet, wait for his opportunity, and then when it comes, let his play do the talking for him. But that's not really his style, as we know.
Who do you think wins the ACC, Danny Kanell?
I think it's either Florida State or Miami. Like, I know Virginia's been a good story. Louisville's kind of flying under the radar. SMU's not out of the picture. They're 0-0. They have 2 losses, but none in the ACC.
Georgia Tech?
Georgia Tech, last weekend they almost, crapped the bed against Wake Forest. It is a fun race. It's wide open. I'll still go with the talented rosters. My hunch tells me Miami because even if Florida State wins this weekend, it's really hard to beat a team twice. That would be neutral. If Florida State wins this weekend, I do think it's large part because of the home field advantage. So I'd probably say Miami, but I wouldn't count out Florida State.
And with what you've seen through a month and projected into the future, your national championship game prediction, if you had to modify one, is what?
I would go Oregon over Ohio State. I think those are the 2 best teams in college football right now. I think the SEC kind of beating each other up. I mentioned Alabama. I think they're a Final Four team. I don't know if they're a championship team. And, boy, I tell you, the Big Ten looks like once again it's going to have 2 teams in the Natty.
Check out betonline.ag for updated college football playoff, Heisman, and college football Week 6 lines. He is Danny Kanell. DK, appreciate it as always. Thank you.
You got it, Dak. We'll see you.